Back to business. President Trump signing a deal to get the government back open as the Democrats who forced the shutdown still are pointing blame.
The White House refused to engage in negotiations over the weekend. The great deal-making president sat on the sidelines.
This, as liberal journalist Joy Reid points blame at media bias. In a tweet, she writes, "There is nothing so predictable as media spin in favor of Republicans."
Right.
Really?
But we were talking about Earth. Here to react, Daily Wire editor-in-chief Ben Shapiro. Ben, you know those right-wing spinmeisters, you know, the media just is run by the right wing.
100%. I mean, since 2013, when there was a study showing that a full 7% of journalists are registered Republicans or identify as such, I've known that the media has been biased toward Republicans. I mean, Joy Reid is, I think, on this stuff patently insane. She said yesterday, by the way, that the Democrats won the shutdown on Twitter. She said that they actually manipulated the president, which is a shock. She had also said last week that Jeff Flake, the senator who made a speech openly on the floor of the Senate ripping Trump, was a Trumpist. So clearly the media bias extends to Joy Reid in favor of Republicans. These stats are ridiculous, by the way. In the first 100 days, according to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government study, the media coverage of President Trump was unprecedentedly bad and negative. In fact, networks like CNN and NBC had negative stories covering the president outpaced positive ones at a 13-to-1 rate. CBS covered the president 90% negative, in excess of 90% negative. That was not rare in the media. So this idea from Joy Reid that somehow the media was responsible for the Democrats losing this, if the Democrats were able to lose this political standoff with the media as heavily biased toward Democrats as they have been historically, that just shows how bad the Democrats were at this.
Since you were talking about who, in her estimation, won this whole shutdown thing, who do you think won and lost? Who are the winners and the losers?
I mean, obviously, the big loser here is Chuck Schumer, who shut down the government for no apparent reason, got nothing out of Mitch McConnell, got nothing out of President Trump, and now we're going to have to do all this again on February 8th, except for the fact that the Democrats have no leverage because they've already shown that they're not going to be willing to keep the government shut down over any of these same issues. So Schumer is the big loser here. Even members of his own party, Nancy Pelosi, all the senators who want to run in 2020 on the Democratic side have been ripping him up and down. I don't think that that's likely to stop. President Trump, obviously, is a big winner here. He didn't have to give up anything in order to get past the government shutdown. Mitch McConnell is looking more and more clever by the day over the past several months, not only ushering tax cuts through the Senate, but also preventing Schumer from continuing to shut down the government by offering essentially nothing in return. The Democrats look like they're in a fair bit of disarray here, which is kind of a shock because you would have figured that they would have been unified simply by their hatred of the president. But apparently there are enough Democrats in red states who are concerned that they were going to run competitive races if they continue to shut down the government for literally no reason.
Ben, you travel to all of these states around the country. What are the people in middle America, not the ones that live in New York, not the journalists that live in California or the swamp in D.C., what do they really care about? And what is their impression of what's happening in D.C.?
I mean, I think that there's always an impression that D.C. is a hotbed of stupidity and corruption. But I think that when it comes to things like the government shutdown, I think the vast majority of Americans, forget the coast or the center of the country, because I've spent a lot of time, I mean, I've lived my entire life on the coast. I think the vast majority of people, when there's a government shutdown, aside from the media headlines about how the world is going to end and the zombie apocalypse is upon us, most people do not feel it, especially if the government shutdown is only a couple of days. Most people look around and they don't see people dying in the streets and they think, isn't so bad. And then they look at the government being shut down by Democrats over illegal immigration, and they say, you're really not going to send checks to our military members because you want to protect illegal immigrants? Like, this is the math that you're doing? Democrats realize that, which is why, again, this thing passed overwhelmingly among Democrats, right? In the Senate, I think the vote was 81 votes overall, which includes about a majority of Democrats, I believe.
See, my thing is, I really could care less about Republicans who did win this round. I care about them actually getting a budget done, and I care about them finding a way forward on this impasse. So they got to find a way forward. My sense is there's a chance the dam broke for moderate Democrats like Manchin, everyone except Tester, Heidi Heitkamp, and others. They had almost 80 votes for this. They said, I'm not going to let Chuck Schumer decide my fate. And maybe there might be a sense that they can get something done. If you see a Tom Cotton in these negotiations, some of the people that have stayed out and criticized from the outside, if they get their hands dirty on the inside with these so-called moderates, we might actually get something done in 3 weeks. Is there a chance of that, Ben?
I think there is a chance of that, particularly because the president is going to have to stand fast, and he has stood fast so far. If he stands fast on his immigration platform and he says, listen, you're not going to get full-on DACA, some sort of executive amnesty enshrined in law, unless we also get not only border security, but also a revisions to the diversity visa lottery program and revisions to chain migration, and we actually get some serious immigration reform here, then nothing's going to happen. And he has the prerogative, right? He's the chief executive. He could just continue to not enforce the law the same way that Obama did. So there's really not a lot of political pressure on the president at this point, but there is a lot of political pressure on the left from the left side to the Democrats. I think that so long as Trump stands fast and he stands with folks like Tom Cotton and, yes, Stephen Miller, I think that he's going to be able to get a much better deal out of Democrats than skeptics thought just a few weeks ago.
Okay. Thank you, Ben.
All right, Ben Shapiro, so you're on NRA TV, and obviously, so we're very big on the Second Amendment, and it's what we focus on mostly on this program, not all the time, but mostly. Let me ask you, when it comes to young people, the millennial generation, what do you think and where do they stand when it comes to guns? Does it mimic the older population where those on the left have this idea that somehow they're bad, except for in the South and maybe middle America? Or is there an awakening going on among young people and firearms, in your opinion?
I mean, I think there is something of an awakening going on. I think there's a libertarian streak that runs very strong in people of my age and below, just where they say we don't want government involved in any of our stuff, and that includes guns. I will say there's a cultural gap, no question. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles. I went to law school in Boston. There are a lot of people who grew up around me who have never seen a gun in person, have never held a gun, and so they see guns as inherently frightening, as inherently spooky, as inherently like the gun is going to take on a life of its own and shoot somebody. And you have to be trained out of that. I mean, you really have to be given almost an aversion therapy. You actually have to train with a gun. You have to go to a range. You have to be taught by somebody who knows what they're doing. I grew up that way, not holding guns. Now I own a couple of guns myself. But that's because, I actually put forth the effort to go and get educated and learn how to do it. I think that, a lot of the work the NRA does in educating people is going to make a big difference there. The more people have actually seen and fired a gun and seen that it's a tool rather than in evil in and of itself, I think that the better the gun rights movement will do among young people. All
right, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and either answer is okay, all right? Are you a member of the NRA?
I don't think I'm technically a member of the NRA. I did win a prize from the NRA back when I was in law school for a law essay that I wrote, actually. But I don't think that I'm technically a member.
All right. Well,
I was for several years, actually.
That's, to me, speaks very highly of the NRA. We're going to give you an award even if you're not a member. No problem there. It's something a group like the NRA would do and be all for. Here's the reason why I ask you. One, I would love to have you as a member. And look, we need young people, whether we have great conservative thinkers who are wildly famous like yourself, Ben Shapiro, or just other young people out there who are just trying to make their way. We need young people. What do you think our message should be here at NRA TV or the NRA's message to reach out to more young people to get them to join? Because I would not be intellectually honest if I didn't say that we need to make it a goal of ours, because we cannot let all of the membership pass through here without signing up younger people.
I think that the best thing that you guys can do is a lot of the stuff that you're already doing in terms of saying to young people that your rights are under assault, and also that even if you're not somebody who's been familiar with guns, these are tools that you should get to know. This is something that you should know about instead of just being scared about something that you've never spent any time with. So your educational programs first, and then you say, now that you've been educated about what a firearm is, what it does, and how to use it, now you can talk about rights. I think that starting with the rights argument is probably a losing argument. Getting people familiar with what you're talking about and then making the rights argument is a winning one.
Yeah, I will tell you, well, obviously I'm biased, but there is great power and there is strength in numbers. There is no doubt. And the NRA and its 5 million members were instrumental in getting Donald Trump elected. And the only way to continue that power is to have more and more members come on board.
No question. I mean, I've always thought that the NRA does fantastic work in protecting Second Amendment rights, and without the NRA doing that work, and despite the media's lies about what the NRA does, the NRA is a popular grassroots organization. This is not something where you guys are being paid by the gun lobby because you're corrupt. There are millions of Americans who feel that their gun rights have to be protected by someone. I think that's what the NRA stands for.
And my message to young people would be, it's not just about the guns, it's about the freedom. And you could almost make the argument that it's more about the freedom, and the guns are there to protect that, Ben.
No question. I mean, that's an argument I've been making my entire career with regard to gun rights, is that in the end, what stands between you and tyranny is the power of the weapon in your hand. and the power of the goodness in your heart. And if you combine those two things, that's how you maintain a free country. That's how a free country was won in the first place. All
right, last question for you. Any other colleges out there now have your picture with devil horns coming out of your head on their walls, graffitiized, and all of that thing? You got any plans for speeches where they're not going to let you speak?
Well, I'm not sure about the bans yet, but we are speaking, I believe, 3 times on the East Coast at the end of this month. We're speaking 4 times throughout the country at the end of February. So I think we have something like 12 to 15 more colleges that we're going to be visiting between the beginning of this year and the end of April, I think.
You know, my biggest problem with universities today, and when I went to school, I graduated in 1991. Certainly there was a liberal bent to where I went to school, but I still don't remember professors telling me what to think. I really still believe when I was at school, maybe it was the last great years of colleges, and I went to a little liberal arts school in the middle of Ohio where it would be bastionally liberal. But they taught me how to think and how to be a critical thinker, not what to think. And I don't think that's happening in our colleges and universities today.
I think increasingly it's a minority viewpoint that teaching people to think for themselves is worthwhile. More often it seems like there are professors who are interested in teaching you that what they think is the correct way to think, that what they're teaching you is fact as opposed to their opinion. I don't want to say that's true for all professors. I think there are a lot of great professors out there, but increasingly the ivory tower effect has had a significant negative impact, I think, on the teaching profession.
All right. Ben Shapiro, it's great having you on the program. You want me to send you a membership application, buddy?
I'm happy for you to do so. Shoot it over.
Sounds good. Maybe I'll even pay the small amount it is for the first year for you. Buddy, thank you for coming on the program.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.